The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, its contents worth more than Daniel Morgan's modest home and everything in it. As he stared at the check with trembling hands, memories of that rainy funeral just 3 days earlier flooded back, how a simple act of kindness toward a grieving stranger had somehow led to this moment that would forever change his and his daughter's lives. But the money wasn't what mattered most. It was the note attached that brought him to his knees. "You gave me dignity when I had nothing left. Now I can finally rest knowing someone like you exists in this world. If you're moved by stories of unexpected kindness and the remarkable ways our lives can transform in an instant, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us of our shared humanity." Daniel Morgan adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, the dark circles under his eyes a testament to another sleepless night. At 42, his once youthful face had weathered into something more solemn, carved by years of single parenthood and financial struggle. "Dad, have you seen my black shoes?" Lily called from upstairs, her voice carrying the same heaviness it had for months now. "Check under your bed, sweetheart," he replied, his voice gentle despite his exhaustion. Today would be difficult. Attending the funeral of his former colleague James wasn't something he looked forward to, but he owed it to the man who had once helped him keep his job when Lily's mother died. Back then, Daniel had been drowning in grief and new responsibilities, missing deadlines and showing up late. James had covered for him, spoken to management, given him the breathing room to find his footing as a suddenly single father. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, 16 years old and already carrying herself with a quiet dignity that sometimes broke Daniel's heart. She'd grown up too fast after her mother's death. "Do we have to stay long?" she asked, descending the stairs in her simple black dress. "No, honey. We'll pay our respects and then we can go." He squeezed her shoulder. "Thank you for coming with me." The rain started as they pulled into the cemetery, a light drizzle that gradually intensified as they made their way to the gathering beneath the funeral tent. Daniel recognized a few faces from his old workplace, but most were strangers. James had left the company 5 years ago, apparently building a new life that Daniel knew nothing about. The service was brief but moving. James had no immediate family, something Daniel hadn't known, and the eulogies came primarily from business associates who spoke of his brilliance in investments and property development. It painted a picture of a successful but solitary man, so different from the friendly colleague Daniel remembered. As people began to disperse, Daniel noticed an elderly man sitting alone in the back row. Unlike the others in expensive suits and dresses, his clothes were worn and slightly ill-fitting. He sat hunched, seemingly forgotten as the crowd moved toward their cars. "Wait here a minute," Daniel told Lily, who had already started toward their car to escape the rain. Daniel approached the old man, whose eyes remained fixed on the casket now being prepared for lowering. "Excuse me, sir. Would you like to share my umbrella to your car?" The man looked up, his weathered face creased with grief. "I don't have a car," he said simply. "I took the bus, but I think I missed the last one back." Daniel glanced at his watch. The cemetery was on the outskirts of town, and the man was right, the infrequent bus service would have ended by now. "I'd be happy to give you a ride home," Daniel offered. The old man's eyes widened slightly. "That's very kind, but it's quite far. I live on the other side of town." "It's no trouble," Daniel insisted. "I'm Daniel, by the way. James and I used to work together." "Walter," the man replied, extending a gnarled hand. "James was my landlord." Daniel helped Walter to his feet, noticing how the man winced with each movement. They walked slowly to where Lily waited by the car, her questioning look softening when she saw Walter struggling through the rain. "This is my daughter, Lily," Daniel said. "Walter needs a ride home." Lily immediately opened the back door. "Here, sir, you can sit in the back where there's more room for your legs." The drive across town took nearly an hour in the worsening rain. Walter lived in a part of the city Daniel rarely visited, a neighborhood of aging apartment buildings and corner stores with barred windows. As they pulled up to Walter's address, Daniel's heart sank at the sight of the dilapidated building. "Would you like us to help you inside?" Daniel asked, concerned about the steep steps leading to the entrance. Walter hesitated, then nodded. "If it's not too much trouble. My arthritis makes these steps a challenge on good days." Inside, the building smelled of mildew and old cooking. Walter's apartment was on the 3rd floor, and the elevator was out of service. They climbed slowly, Walter pausing frequently to catch his breath. By the time they reached his door, the old man was trembling with exhaustion. The apartment was small but meticulously clean. What struck Daniel most was how sparse it was: a single chair at a small table, a worn couch, and walls bare except for a single framed photograph of a young couple. "Please, sit down," Walter gestured to the couch. "I can make some tea." "Let me," Lily offered, already moving toward the tiny kitchenette. While Lily prepared tea, Walter lowered himself into his chair with a sigh. "James was going to sell this building," he said quietly. "He told me last month. The new owners will raise the rent beyond what I can afford on my pension." Daniel felt a pang of sympathy. "Do you have family who could help?" Walter shook his head. "My wife passed 20 years ago. Our son lives overseas, Japan. He has his own family, his own struggles." He gestured to the photograph. "That's all I have left of our life together." Lily returned with 3 mugs of tea, and they sat in companionable silence for a few minutes. Daniel noticed a small stack of unpaid bills on the table, the red "Final Notice" stamps visible even from where he sat. "Walter," he said carefully, "is there anything we can do to help? Maybe I could look into some affordable housing options, or—" "You've already done more than most would," Walter interrupted. "Giving an old man a ride home from a funeral isn't exactly how most people want to spend their afternoon." His smile was genuine despite the sadness in his eyes. As they prepared to leave, Daniel impulsively pulled out his wallet. He had just cashed his paycheck, planning to pay his own overdue electric bill on Monday. Instead, he placed most of the cash on Walter's table. "Please," he said when Walter began to protest. "James helped me once when I was struggling. I'd like to think he'd want me to do the same for you." Walter's eyes filled with tears. "Young man, I've lived long enough to know that kindness like yours is rare. Thank you." In the car, Lily was unusually quiet. Finally, as they neared home, she spoke. "Dad, that was most of our money, wasn't it?" Daniel nodded, a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. "We'll be okay. I get paid again in 2 weeks." "I know," Lily said. "I'm not worried about that. I just—" She turned to look at him. "I'm really proud of you." That night, Daniel lay awake worrying about the electric bill, about the leak in the bathroom that needed fixing, about Lily's college fund that remained stubbornly empty despite his best efforts. But beneath the worry was a sense of peace. He had done the right thing, even if it made their already difficult situation a little harder. The next morning, Daniel called in sick to work, something he never did, and spent the day researching affordable housing options for seniors. He found 3 possibilities that might work for Walter and printed out the information, planning to mail it to him. That evening, as he and Lily were eating a simple dinner of pasta, the doorbell rang. Daniel opened the door to find a well-dressed woman in her 50s, her expression serious. "Mr. Morgan?" "Daniel Morgan?" she asked. "Yes, that's me." She extended her hand. "I'm Margaret Chen, James Wilson's attorney. May I come in?" Confused, Daniel stepped aside to let her enter. Lily appeared in the hallway, curiosity written across her face. "This is my daughter, Lily," Daniel said. "Lily, this is James's lawyer." Ms. Chen nodded politely to Lily before turning back to Daniel. "Mr. Morgan, I've been trying to reach you since yesterday. You're not an easy man to find." "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Why would you be looking for me?" Ms. Chen opened her briefcase and removed a folder. Mr. Wilson made some significant changes to his will shortly before his death. I need to discuss these changes with you. They moved to the living room, where Ms. Chen laid out several documents on the coffee table. Mr. Wilson amended his will 3 weeks ago, following his terminal diagnosis. He left specific instructions regarding one of his properties, an apartment building on Westfield Avenue. Daniel recognized the address immediately. It was Walter's building. Mr. Wilson left the building to you, Mr. Morgan. The words hung in the air, incomprehensible. There must be some mistake, Daniel finally managed. I hadn't seen James in years. Ms. Chen shook her head. There's no mistake. Mr. Wilson was very clear. He also left a letter for you. She handed Daniel a sealed envelope. With trembling hands, Daniel opened it and began to read. Dear Daniel. If you're reading this, then I've finally lost my battle with cancer. Yes, I've been sick for some time now, though I kept it quiet. When you face your mortality, you start to think about the kind of legacy you want to leave behind. Years ago, you were going through hell after losing your wife, yet you still found time to thank me for the small things I did to help you keep your job. That gratitude stayed with me. In a world where kindness is often overlooked, you noticed it and acknowledged it. I've done well for myself financially, but I've failed in many other ways. No family, few real friends. The building I'm leaving you isn't my most valuable property, but it's the one that matters most to me. There are 12 tenants there, most of them elderly, all on fixed incomes. I've kept their rents well below market value because they needed the help, and frankly, I didn't need the money. I'm asking you to continue this. The building generates enough income to maintain itself and provide you with a modest monthly sum. The property values in that area are rising rapidly. Developers have been after me to sell for years. You could make a significant profit if you choose to sell, and I wouldn't blame you. But I hope you'll consider keeping it, at least for a while. There's one tenant in particular, Walter Jenkins in apartment 3B. He's been there the longest, nearly 30 years. His wife used to make me cookies when I was just starting out as a landlord. Please look after him if you can. Thank you for being the kind of person who reminds others that goodness still exists in this world. Sincerely, James Wilson. Daniel looked up from the letter, stunned. I don't understand. Why me? Ms. Chen smiled slightly. Mr. Wilson spoke of you occasionally. He said you were the most decent man he'd ever worked with. Apparently, that made quite an impression. After Ms. Chen left, promising to be in touch with more details, Daniel and Lily sat in silence, trying to process what had just happened. Dad, Lily finally said, does this mean we're rich now? Daniel shook his head slowly. Not rich, no. But it means we have options we didn't have before. He looked at the property documents spread across the table. It means Walter and the other tenants are safe. The following day, Daniel visited the apartment building again. This time, he introduced himself to each tenant as their new landlord, assuring them that nothing would change regarding their living situations. The relief on their faces was palpable. When he reached Walter's apartment, the old man invited him in for tea again. I knew James was sick, Walter said as they sat at his small table. He wouldn't admit it, but I could tell. The last time I saw him, he asked me about you. Daniel looked up in surprise. About me? Why? Walter smiled. He'd seen you at the grocery store a few months back. Said you were helping an elderly woman load her car. He watched you, said you didn't even know her, just saw she needed help and stepped in. Walter shook his head. James was impressed by that. Said it reminded him of why he'd helped you years ago. I barely remember that, Daniel admitted. It wasn't anything special. That's exactly what makes it special, son. You don't even remember your own kindnesses because they're just part of who you are. That evening, Daniel received another visitor, a real estate developer named Richard Harmon, who offered him an astonishing sum for the apartment building. The location is prime for redevelopment, Harmon explained. We could close within 30 days. Cash offer. The amount would solve all of Daniel's financial problems. It would fully fund Lily's college education. It would allow him to buy a proper house instead of their rented duplex. It was life-changing money. What would happen to the current tenants? Daniel asked. Harmon waved a dismissive hand. Standard relocation packages, of course. Nothing to worry about. But Daniel had seen Walter's apartment, had met the other tenants, a retired teacher, a widower with health problems, a young single mother working 2 jobs. The standard relocation package wouldn't find them affordable housing in a city where rents were skyrocketing. I'm sorry, Mr. Harmon. The building isn't for sale. After Harmon left, Lily found her father sitting on the porch steps, staring into the darkness. You turned down the money, she said, sitting beside him. It wasn't a question. Yes. Because of Walter and the others. Daniel nodded. They need that building more than we need the money. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. Mom would be proud of you. 3 days after the funeral, Daniel received an envelope by courier. Inside was a check for an amount that made his hands shake, along with a brief note. Asterisk, you gave me dignity when I had nothing left. Now I can finally rest knowing someone like you exists in this world. Asterisk. It was signed simply, James. Ms. Chen called an hour later to explain. It was his personal account, separate from the estate. He left explicit instructions that it be delivered to you 3 days after the funeral. He wanted to make sure you had time to make your decision about the building without this influencing you. In the months that followed, Daniel used part of the money to renovate the apartment building, fixing the elevator, replacing the leaking roof, and updating the heating system. He kept the rents affordable and established a small community garden in the previously neglected backyard. Walter became a regular visitor to Daniel and Lily's new home, a modest but comfortable house just 10 minutes from the apartment building. The old man taught Lily to play chess and shared stories of his youth that made them both laugh until they cried. 1 year after James's funeral, Daniel stood in the community garden, watching as the tenants gathered for their monthly potluck dinner. Walter sat at the head of the table, his arthritis much improved thanks to the treatments he could now afford. The young single mother had finished her degree and found a better job. The retired teacher had started a small library in the building's newly renovated common room. Lily appeared at his side, camera in hand. She'd developed an interest in photography and was documenting the transformation of the building and its residents. Dad, she said, reviewing the photos she'd just taken, remember when you told me that kindness matters even when no one notices? I remember. She showed him a photo she'd captured of Walter laughing with the other tenants, his face transformed by joy. I think sometimes the universe does notice. And sometimes it notices in really big ways. Daniel smiled, thinking of James's letter, of the rainy funeral, of the simple decision to help an old man get home safely. A small kindness that had somehow changed everything. The thing is, he said, putting his arm around his daughter's shoulders, even if none of this had happened, the building, the money, all of it, helping Walter that day would still have been the right thing to do. Lily nodded. That's why you're you, Dad. As the sun set over the garden, casting long shadows across the tables where the residents shared food and conversation, Daniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't known since before his wife died. Life had taken unexpected turns, bringing both hardship and blessing. But through it all, the simple truth remained: kindness, offered without expectation of return, had the power to transform not just the lives of others, but one's own life as well. And sometimes, that transformation could happen between a funeral and nightfall, changing everything forever. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us of the power of